Hey everyone. So
Hello,
I can
everyone.
already see a lot of people out there, and we already have our amazing guests with us today. And in just a few minutes, I'll be introducing them. But before going ahead, hi Kunal, hi Pratyush. Thank you so much for joining. And yeah, I think this is a session that a lot of people have been waiting for because it's something very technical and web development. A lot of people seem interested in this particular field, and I'm really excited for today's session because I think I'm also going to learn along. And for today's session, we have Wilson and Bowen with us. So let me just give a quick introduction and then I won't take much of their time. So Wilson works as an engineer intern at Opentext and Bowen works as a software developer at Idea Notion. And I'm really excited to be looking forward to, how they proceed with the session and everything. And I'll just quickly give over to Wilson and Bowen now.
Thank you very much for the graceful introductions. So I guess we'll get straight started. I'm gonna begin by sharing you guys my screen, and you guys can all follow along a quick slideshow that we made. So welcome to our session about the intro to full stack web development. I'm Wilson Wang, and this is
I'm Bowen Sun.
cool. So before we get started, I want to make sure that you guys know what to expect from this thing. We expect you guys to have a basic knowledge of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but we will be breaking down everything in quite a bit of detail, so even a beginner will have an easy time picking it up. The IDE we'll be using is Visual Studio's code. Specifically, we're running it on a server so that you guys can preview everything live. I will either get my partner here to send you guys a link that you guys can watch everything we're doing live, or one of the event organizers will get sent the link and they can send it out to you guys. And we won't be showing you guys how to install Node, and there will be a couple CDNs that we'll be using along the way that we will explain how to use, and the links will be sent as well as all the source code at the end. So what can you expect to learn? In this talk, we will be going through some of the fundamentals and basics of full stack web development. To make things more enjoyable, we'll try to avoid the very theory-heavy portions, but we will cover most of the important parts. We'll be going through how to create a demo application that teaches the baseline for front-end and back-end development, hopefully sparking a little bit of inspiration working with web technologies. It's really cool. So who am I? I'm Wilson F. Wang, and I'll be teaching you guys through the back end. I'm currently studying mathematics. I'm a second-year student, and I'm currently in an internship at Opentext as a development engineer. I prefer to use Python, C, and C++, but I am very familiar with web languages, and I've done many freelance projects with it. My hobbies are playing video games, making applications, and of course, spending time with family. During COVID, we just have plenty of time to do that.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. So I'm Bowen Sun. Today I'll be kind of walking you through the front end of full stack development. I'm currently a computer science student at the University of Waterloo, and for my co-op, I'm working as a software developer at Idea Notion Development. I love programming and JavaScript and Python, and some of my hobbies include playing Valorant and playing basketball.
I want to move this out of your way. These little things should not be here. Hide yourself. Okay, that just worked. All right, let's get started. First, I want to lay down some basic definition. What in the world does the hot term full stack developer even mean? Like, you guys can probably heard it all over the internet. There's like, we need a full stack developer positions open now. Well, at its core, it means someone who works with both front and back end systems. Well, what exactly does that mean? Front end is the stuff you can see, like the slideshow, for example, web pages, styling, everything that you can visually interpret. That's the front end portion. The back end portion is the scripts that you don't see. They are the things that manage the data, manage like communications, and different taking pictures, sending messages, and other different features that make the front end more dynamic and lively. So as a course objective for our course is we want to develop a simple full stack application that shares COVID tips around the world. We want to introduce some important and useful tips in web development. We'll be using a Node.js backend and a React front end full end. Web Applications 101. Well, you guys have to know the basics before getting into creating a web application. For example, what is a web application? Well, web applications were made with a model where a client would demand resources from a server. Like, hey, Bowen, can I have some resource? And the server will say,
Sure.
Yeah, and he'll respond with me for the resource. That was on the fly, so it's okay. So and then they will close the connection, and then the server will say goodbye, and then he'll be on his way. But if you have thousands of requests at once, there needs to be some way to do it. So there's a couple ways that are traditionally used in web development. There's queuing, threading, and single loop asynchronous connections. Queuing is where you use either priority queue or a first in, first out, or last in, last out stack. These basically mean that the server will only handle one person at once, and they'll do the transaction, finish it, and move on to the next person. Threading is where the server goes like, bring it on. I'll take all of you guys at once. I'll create a new thread for each of you, and I'll split myself real thin. And single loop asynchronous is there's just one main thread, but like it'll asynchronously pull things in and handle them as resources are freed up. There are benefits to all of them, and don't think that like bring it on technique is be all and end all. Even though creating a thread for each of them will allow like a lot of people to come in at once, there are purposes for queuing and single loop asynchronous.
Okay, so before I go into the front end details, I think it would be good if you guys kind of checked out what the end product is. We kind of want to run you through a really simple full stack application, and I think the best way to learn is honestly just get into the code, go hands on, and just kind of learn from experimenting. And we thought that we kind of give a tutorial of this full stack application, but I think Venture's gonna host it on a link, and then we can provide that for you so you guys can play with it. But yeah, so I'm gonna be walking you through the front end, which is React. So what is React? React is a JavaScript front end library that basically creates lots of reusable components and also manages states. And what's really great about these states is it uses something called a virtual DOM. And this makes rendering your views and your pages much faster, because what it does is instead of like changing the DOM every time, what it does is it compares your states you had before and the states that change. It only makes the changes necessary and re-renders the view of what needs to be changed in terms of states. Now, what's also great about React is that there's tons of support everywhere. There's constantly lots of community involved in React. It's a really, really popular front-end library right now. So you'll find lots of people who are able to answer all your React questions online. And also, there's great error messages in React. React is a really well-built front-end library, and the error logs, error messages are all really good. So yeah, I think right now I'm just going to kind of jump right into coding and kind of get started here.
All right, you can take over on this machine.
Yep. All right, everyone. So when you first come into Visual Studio Code, you guys can just create any directory or folder you want and just drag that into Visual Studio Code, like right here. And that's the folder you're going to kind of be creating the project in. And then what you're going to do is when you first start, you're going to open up a new terminal. I'm just going to open up with Tmux. Okay, so right now we're in our HackOn folder. If you guys aren't in your HackOn folder for some reason, you can just cd into it. But yeah, so I already went ahead and created the React app. But for those of you who haven't yet, who don't know how, what you do is you do np, like once you install Node and everything, you get this. You can do npx create -react -app, and then the next thing you add is what you want to call this folder that you're creating. So I like to call it client because this kind of involves all of the front end stuff. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it unicorns if you really wanted to, but I'm just going to stay with client. Also, if some of you guys have Yarn installed on your computer, I recommend adding --use npm. So we're going to kind of use npm instead of Yarn to just get everything installed. But yeah, this is basically where you're going to run. It's going to take maybe like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, depends how fast your computer is. But we already went ahead, got installed, so you guys don't have to wait into this client folder. So let's just, once you install it, let's just cd into this new folder, clients or whatever you called it, and let's run a quick npm start. And let's see what exactly shows up on our screen. Sorry, it's just starting development server currently.
It should be working. You just need to. Yeah.
All right, so you see there's a little spinning logo, some HTML elements, and this is kind of what React kind of loads at the beginning. But yeah.
So you guys can access this page with us at hackon.wilsonwang.com. They will send a link. I can't put comments. And just to answer a real quick question, you guys asked if you guys can follow along. Yes, of course, we'll be glad to have you guys follow along. If we are going too fast at any point, that would be great. We can make sure we slow it down, and I will 100% zoom in our coding environment.
Yeah. So
I noticed that it was too small too, but yes, we will do that.
Just let us know if we're going too fast, if you want us to slow down, and you can follow along, see what exactly is going on live on hackon.wilsonwang.com as we're building this application. So yeah, let's just continue coding. So when you first create this React app, you'll notice, wow, there's a bunch of these random folders. And if you guys have never worked with Node, it might be a bit daunting to see so many things here. So I thought I would just go through a quick explanation of what exactly all of these things are. So Node modules is kind of all of the packages you have installed. So for example, React or like Babel. Now, what npm does is instead of like maybe including like a cdn or script take in your HTML file, how you import like packages and stuff is you download them locally through npm. So for example, if I wanted to maybe bring in a front-end package like Material UI to make all my text boxes and forms look really cool, then I could just npm install Material UI, and then I would bring over this Node package and put it into Node modules. Now with Node modules, it automatically creates this folder called package-lock.json, but we don't have to worry about that too much. Now package.json basically holds all of your scripts and your dependencies. So basically, Node modules is a massive folder. Like sometimes some projects could be having multiple packages that have come with it. So we have to keep track of all of these packages so that when other people want to maybe use this code, they're able to install it really easily. And this keeps track of all the versions and packages we're kind of using. And basically, Node modules, we don't want to push our code. When we push our code, we never want to push Node modules with it because it's such a massive folder. So in our git ignore, we just ignore this Node module. So when we're pushing through git, it doesn't actually push the Node modules onto the web. So if you want to share your code with friends or your coworkers, that's completely fine. And they can just get all the Node modules downloaded properly because of this package.json file that keeps track of all the versions and all the necessary packages you need. Now, package.json also has these really cool scripts. And you might be wondering, well, what do these scripts do? So start basically starts the app into your server or your local host. And in this case, when we run npm start, it just brought you to the localhost 3000. So if you guys want to look at your code, I think it will automatically open up, or you can just go to your Chrome and type in localhost colon 3000 to kind of see what's running after you create this React app. And run build basically creates creates a folder that where you would actually send it onto the web, send it to the public. And this is like when your project is complete, you would create a build for it and then host it. Test is just for testing purposes. If you write test cases for your web application, you obviously want to test it, and this just runs through all the test cases, make sure everything is working. And exec kind of just shows some information about your project, like what all the packages installed, stuff like that. So I'm not going to bore you too much with all of these folders. Just want to give you a really general sense of what they do. README just gives you information. But yeah, mainly the majority of our coding will be done in this source folder. And the source folder is kind of where all the React magic happens. So I'm just going to go ahead and first off delete some things that I think we don't really need because this is a really basic tutorial. You guys can not delete it if you guys don't want to, but I'm going to delete them. So I'm going to delete setup test.js. Report web vitals, going to delete that as well. Logo.svg, So it's just failing to compile right now because I've been importing some of these files, and I'm just going to get rid of those import statements in my app.js and index.js. So we're just going to delete everything until we leave just index.js and app.js as well as their CSS components. We can get rid of report web vitals and get rid of the actual function itself. And here we can get rid of the logo. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and in this div, this looks very similar to HTML in case you guys are wondering, but I'm just going to put in something like a header. Hello, React. So if we actually go to the Wilson F. Wang website right now, you'll notice that on the page, it just shows up Hello, React. So what exactly is going on here? We wrote something that looks like HTML in this function called app, but where is it being displayed? Why is it suddenly being displayed on the screen? So what this app thing is it's a component. So React can create these components, which you can export, and then you can use in your other JavaScript files. So in index.js, we have this react.dom.render. And here we actually rendered the app component. And this is imported from the app file. You also notice something down here, document.getElementById root. So if any of you guys have coded in JavaScript before, this is just a very popular JavaScript thing where you grab from your index.html by the ID. So this public folder here basically contains our index.html, which is what is basically the website itself. And if we go here, we'll notice, whoa, there's a div called ID equals root. So what basically JavaScript does is it renders all of these components that you built into this div, and then it shows it on the screen. So in this case, we wrote a component app, and then we in here, which is just a div, class name equals app, h1 hello react, and then we put it here as a component, and then we rendered it into this root element. So yeah, it's really cool. And that kind of brings us to our first point. So React creates these components that combine kind of everything together. You can put your JavaScript, your HTML all into one component, and it kind of bundles everything really nicely. So so what is this div thing, by the way? This is just simple JSX. So this is kind of how React creates like elements in the DOM. But it uses something called JSX, which is very similar to HTML. Normally, you would write something like, I think it was react.create elements, and then you would put in whatever element you want to create, like an H1 or H2. But JSX allows you to write syntax in a way that's very similar to HTML. But there's obviously some little things that are different. For example, here it says class name instead of class equals app. So just some very minor changes here and there. Now, let's just get into it and kind of start creating stuff. So I'm going to add a button here, and let's just call it alert. Okay. So if we go into Wilson F. Wang, we'll see an alert me button now. And what basically we do is I want to show you how exactly React combines JavaScript and HTML all into one place. So above our return statement is actually where we can write our JavaScript. So let's say I want to create a function called alert me. And in this function, I want to just make an alert that just says, hey, alert. Oh, sorry. Voice disturbance? Is it getting better? Oh. Is the voice disturbance a little bit better? Voice got lighter. Is it bad? And then for our button, we're going to add an on click. And what's great is we can actually add this function directly into this HTML element, basically. So in here, whenever we add curly braces, it means we're going to add JavaScript into here. So on click, we can add this JavaScript function, alert me. So if we go back to Wilson.fwang, if we click this button, oh my God, it runs the JavaScript. For example, if we wanted to maybe create a variable alert equals alert me, then we can actually change the contents of here to a variable instead of something that we just wrote down. Alert is not a function. Okay. Well, we're just gonna leave it as that for now. Anyways, so yeah, so next let's create our first component, I guess. So we create this app component, but what can we even do with these components? So what components does is it can break down the front end into very, very small parts. So for example, if you have a website, the navigation bar could be a component, or maybe if you have a blog, all of the posts on your blog website could be a component. And what React does is it breaks down your front end into very small parts that can be reusable. So for example, if you had multiple posts on your blog page, then instead of creating a new post every time, you could just create multiple of the same components of a post. So in our case, we're actually creating a tip component. So this is going to be like a little sticky note that kind of shows a COVID tip, and we're going to create a component for this. So I'm going to go ahead and create a div here that will hold all of our tips. I'll just give it a class name for now, tips. And then, so how do we create a new component? We're going to come here into our source file. You can create a new folder if you want, call it components, just to keep everything more organized. I'm just going to keep it simple for now and just do it all in the source folder, because we're not going to be building that many components. So I'm going to call this tip.js, and this will be our tip component. So whenever you create a component, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to import React from React. And then we can create our component now. So to create a component, function tip equals, and then we're going to have the return. And this is going to return some HTML or JSX. So yeah, let's say in our tip, all we have is just an H1. And what this H1 says is, hello, wash your hands. And this is one of our tips that we want to give people.
Again? Oh no.
Oh, what's breaking?
Voice is like crackling up.
Oh.
Check it out. Audio. Sorry, real quick audio check.
Is everything okay?
Seems okay.
Okay. So I'm going to export, and then after we create any component, we have to make sure to export it. So all of our other files are able to use it. So we're going to export default tip. So we're going to, and then in our app.js, we're going to import this new component tip from the tip file. So now we can actually build these tip components. So how exactly do we build them? So what you will kind of write HTML, but instead of writing like a div or button, we now have this element tip. And then if we actually go onto our screen and see what's happening here, it created this component. So it's pretty cool. And if we want to create multiple of them, you can just copy, paste, and boom, we have now 5 tips showing on our screen. So obviously we don't want to keep writing the same tip over and over again. Like there's really no point in doing that. So what we can do is we can bring down a property in this tip. So React has this thing where you can pass down properties between components. So let's say every tip has a tip. And this tip will be like, wash your hands. And let's say it also has something like a title. And title is, this is a COVID tip. So just to save some time, I'm just going to copy this and paste it into all our other tips. And just going to add a number to each one of these, just to kind of differentiate them. But if we go to our website, you'll notice nothing has actually changed. And this is because we haven't actually passed down the property yet into our tip component. So let's go to our tip component here. And inside of the function tip, we're actually going to pass something down called props. And in our H1, we can also add another p tag. So instead of actually, so this props variable is what we pass down here. So we have this tip prop property and this title property. And to access them, we're just going to use curly braces because right now we're using JavaScript, the JavaScript variable props.tip. And this basically gets the tip. And then we can also grab props.title. I just did the opposite way around, but you guys get the idea. So now we see small Easter egg. Okay, yeah, type 1, 2, 3 in the chat for shut up. Anyways, yeah, see, we got this is a COVID tip, wash your hands. This is a COVID tip, wash your hands too. And this is really cool because now we can pass down these properties, down these components, and create these reusable components. Okay, for some people who might be curious, I'm just going to explain a little bit of Es6 syntax. So Es6 created something called deconstructing, where you can actually deconstruct this property, or so just call it tip, title, and then you can directly access these without writing props.tip, etc. It's just something that's added to make syntax easier, and it still works the exact same way.
I'd like to intrude Ashwin Kumar Upala. I probably butchered your name, but congratulations on making that Easter egg. All right, you can continue.
Okay. All right. So yeah, we passed these. Also, if any of you guys like writing arrow functions in React, I thought I'd mention that you can also create components with arrow functions as well. So const tip equals, and then you can write it like that instead of writing function tip. But I'm just going to continue writing function tip because that's how React kind of creates it in the first place, an index, an app, and I'm just going to keep the syntax throughout. So now that we've created these cool components, I'm going to kind of introduce states and hooks. So what are states? States kind of manage how your UI renders. So depending on what a state is, your UI might render something differently. For example, if I have a Boolean state that keeps track of if a user is logged in or not, it might display a different view for a user if they're logged in or if they're not logged in. So let me just give you an example in this tip component. So what we're going to do is we're going to also import a function from React called useState. And how do you, I'm going to first create a really quick array called colors. If you guys have any colors you guys would like me to add, just let me know in the chat and I'll add it for you guys. For now, we can just have black, red, blue, green, but definitely send in all your colors you want. And then we have, let's say, const. And how you create a state or a React hook is you basically, this variable, you create these square brackets, and the first variable in it is the state itself. And then you have a function that allows you to set the state to a different state. So normally you just call it set, whatever you named your state. So in our case, it was color. So we just set color. And then we're going to give it, use the useState function to give it an initial state. And we're just going to give its initial state black. So what are we going to do with this state thing? What I want to do is be able to change the color of this paragraph tag when a button is clicked through the use of state. So let's create a button real quick. and change text color. And on click, so we can create a function up here of click handler. And then we can just pass in an index property to it. And what I will do is it will set the color to a random color inside of this colors array. So I'm just going to show you how to grab this index. It's pretty simple. On click, we're just going to run this function. Remember your curly braces because we're running JavaScript now. Click. Oh shit. Backwards. So we're just gonna on click. We're gonna run the function click handler, and then we're going to pass in this index. So what we want is we want to math.random, which kind of generates a random number from zero to 1, but we want to generate it between 0 to the length of colors, because there's 4 in here. So colors.length. And then we want to floor this variable, so we don't get any random, I guess, floats and stuff. So this will generate us a random index, which is really cool. And if we come to here, oh, right. I have to add the style tag. So we never actually use the state color, and that's why it's saying colors assigned a value but never used. But we want to add the state to this p tag. So we're going to add the style equals, and this is how you add inline style in JavaScript. What you do is you do curly brace, style equals curly brace, and then you're going to do another curly brace, and then we can write all our CSS in here. So we're just going to set the color of this p tag to the color state. I shouldn't have named it the same variable because it gets confusing, but it still works anyways. And if we come here, wow, it changes the color of the paragraph tag when we click this button. So states basically change how your UI is rendered, and whenever a state changes, it can change directly on the screen. It creates very interactive UIs of React. So okay, before,
let the audio. This is the best we can do. Just like wait a bit.
Okay. Is this fine now? Hello, hello. Just making sure the audio is fine.
Yeah, it's really quiet. I'm gonna switch over to this.
Yeah, I'm just gonna switch a headphone because this one isn't working that well.
It's low, yeah.
Sorry.
We're gonna switch a headphone real quick. Try to get this plugged in. A bit more uncomfortable, but it's definitely higher quality. Can you unplug? I'll unplug it. I don't know where it's
All right. Can everyone hear me now? All right, that's awesome. All right. So yeah. Before I move on to the next step, I think I'm going to do some CSS so everything doesn't look this ugly. I'm just gonna run some really basic CSS. So let's just add to our source file a tip.css so we can style these tips. And just remember, in your tip.js, you're going to have to import the CSS file so you can actually use the CSS. You're going to import ./tip.css. So each of these tips, we can give this class name, like a really simple class name real quick. Just give me a second. We're just going to call it class name equals tip. And I already wrote some CSS from before. I mean, I can go through it all like by myself, or if you guys want to, I could just send all the CSS to you guys, because I know you guys are here to kind of learn React, not CSS. But yeah, it's up to you guys. I can either just copy paste everything, or I can just type it all out. But for now, I'm just going to be typing it all out. So in our tip, we basically want to have a width of maybe like 300 pixels, height 300 pixels. Let's make the background color yellow and see how it looks now. I think I have to refresh here. All right, so now we have these like cool little tip boxes. But it's formatted really weirdly. So what we're going to do is we're going to come into our app.js, and we have this div that tips that holds all of these tips. So we're gonna edit this tips div. So we can actually delete all of what they had before. I'm gonna keep the text align center because it's nice to have. But let's just go tips. And in this tip class, what we're gonna do is we're gonna use Flexbox. So Flexbox kind of creates these very.
You can skip to CSS.
Oh, okay. So I guess I'm just going to copy paste it.
Yeah, if you're interested in learning the CSS, you can email one of us after. We'll explain it, and all the code will be posted, and it's under an MIT license, so you can play around with it all you want.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just copy paste all of the app.css I had earlier. So what we did, just set box sizing border box, some simple stuff. So yeah, now we have these really nice looking tips. Can change the text color. And that's basically it. So I guess what I kind of want to show you guys is how exactly would this interact with a backend. So if we come over to, I'm going to show you another function called use effect. So let's go to our app.js back here. And what we're going to do is we're going to import React. I don't know why it has been imported yet. But yeah, we're going to add use state and use effect. So in our app, we're going to create, I guess we can just create a const data equals. I'm just going to copy paste some random data I had before. This is just in JSON format. So this is just some filler data I had written out before. It has some random descriptions, wash your hands, sleep well, stay inside. And what we can do is, instead of writing all these tips one by one, we can actually loop through this data array to create these tips. So we can data, remember your curly brackets because we're writing JavaScript now, data.map, and we're going to map each tip, each of these JSON tips. We're going to basically do these round brackets to render a tip component. And then we can just set its tip equal to tip.description. And I think we also have to give it a title. You can just call the title whatever. So if we go into our website now, we'll see it still renders all of these wash your hands, sleep well, stay inside. But this time, we only had to create one tip component inside of a loop. And for example, whenever how would it happen is you would bring in this data from your API or whatever URL you're fetching from, and then you would get all of this data, and then you could just easily use this data inside of your React front end. So how exactly would we import this data? And this is where kind of states and use effect become pretty important. So we have this state, let's just call it tips, and then set tips. And we're going to begin with a state of an empty array. So this array basically will hold all of the data that we get. And then there's also this function called useEffect. Now, how useEffect works is it runs when the page first renders or when a state is changed. So let's just console.log and useEffect for now, page rendered, and see what exactly happens. I'm just going to open up my console here. And we see page rendered right here, which is awesome. And if we click alert me, oh, that one doesn't actually change a state, does it? Let's just create a state const random. This is just completely useless, but just to give you a general idea, alert set alerts, and we can just use state, put whatever we want in it. But when we alert someone, we also want to set alert to something new, or we can just set it to the same thing again. Notice how when we click alert me, I think I need the set alert. What is it saying? Alert is not a function. I don't think I can call it alert. Let me just, I can call it something else. So let's just call it random variable. And set random var. And we're going to set random var here. It's not re-rendering the useEffect. UseEffect console.log set random var. Maybe that will work. Okay, so notice how when we change the state, it renders again. It renders this useEffect function again. So whenever this function basically runs when the page first gets rendered, so when you first load into here, and then whenever the state, some state changes. But we can also add another like an argument to useEffect, an empty array that basically chooses when it runs useEffect. So whatever we put into this array, only if these states inside of this array change will useEffect be run. So if we don't actually include random var in here, when we alert, it doesn't actually render useEffect again and run the useEffect function. But if we add random var, I spelled something wrong. I called it radum r. But yeah, click alert, out renders. It calls useEffect again. So that's basically how useEffect works. So how we would use it is when the page first renders, we'd fetch some data from an API. And I'm gonna kind of talk about how you would do that later because, yeah, or Fetch could run you through that. But basically, you just write a really simple fetch function that fetches from a URL, and then it sets this tip state to a new data, the new data that comes in. So for now, in our use state, we can just set use state to be data, and then we could just call this tips instead of data. Set random var is not a function. Oh, we can just get rid of this for now. Yeah, it creates all of these data for us. And that's basically it on the React part. I think we ran through useEffect, kind of how it will connect with an API. went through states and hooks, and we also went through components, as well as kind of how React works and how it combines JavaScript and HTML all into one place. I mean, we could get started on the backend part now, or we could style everything to make it look a little better. But it's up to you guys, because we have already all belts. We can implement the CSS whenever we want. Yeah, I can pass it on to Fenchi. He can build the backend now, I guess, if you guys want.
May take a bit. So
Yeah.
I guess while we do the transition, before like we transition away, do you guys have any questions on the React and front end portion? We're not completely done with the front end. There's still a couple more like style changes, and there's going to be a couple more forms and stuff.
Yeah. But I just want to show you some of the basics of React, how exactly it works, some functions you use, and that's just a general idea. I hope this kind of sparks some inspiration for you to kind of want to learn more about React and build more of these interactive UIs in React. So I'm just going to pass it on to Fenchi now, and then I might be back to build the rest of the front end, such as like the form, the styling, the search bar. But yeah.
Thank you for the excellent transition. So now we're going to be transitioning into the part that no one sees, but very, very important nonetheless. This is the backend of the code. So when we begin with the backend, as I talked about when we first started, we kind of talked about like what exactly is the backend. The backend is just stuff that glues the front end together, that serves like the front end, that gives the user what they want and like transmit the data. We're doing a very special backend today. We're actually making our own API. I'm sure you guys have heard that term many times before. I wonder if anyone in the chat already knows what API stands for. If we just like wait real quick. It's okay. No. You're not allowed. You are not allowed. While we get started, we are going to start the npm function. Nice. Congratulations.
Application programming interface.
Yes, it is.
Shout out to Sid Hart.
You butchered that name so bad. Yes. All right. So when we're beginning, Bowen nicely created us the client and the front end portion. We'll be working on the back end portion. We're just gonna be putting it directly into the directory. So we're gonna start by typing npm init right here. We do not have init. That's okay. I'm just gonna list one of these and attach myself to one of them. So Tmux is just a screen. It's a Linux tool. We're not going to go into these Linux tools. They can get a little bit overly complex and unnecessary. So we're going to try that again. We're going to do npm init, and it's going to bring up a lot of things. We're going to call our project hackon. We're going to set the version to be fine. Description, let's call it the COVID tip application. You can call this whatever you want. This description is just used for purposes of README and let people know what the application does. The entry point is fine to be index.js. We might be modifying this later, so it's fine for that for now. We're gonna ignore all three of these. Author, you can put yourself. I'm just going to ignore it. And the license, you can put whatever you want. We're going to keep it at MIT so that everyone can use it and keep it nice and open source so that everyone can just like enjoy the things. So that will generate us a package.json right here. As Bowen already kindly explained, I will not go over what this is because he already explained it all. So what we're going to do is now we're going to install some of our modules that we need. Unlike React, you need to specify exactly which modules you want and exactly which modules you need. So for us, we're going to use cookie parser. Let's get that real quick. Right. You need to type install. Make sure you type install. Okay. We're going to install cookie parser. It's real quick. The other thing we want is something like express to serve stuff. These download times will vary depending on your internet connection. We're lucky enough to have a really fast one, so these should all come down really quickly. HTTP errors will be really nice to diagnose any problems. It is unnecessary, but I am keeping it for this in case something happens. And as a database, we're going to use a really simple database called LowDB. So LowDB is really simple. It's just JSON file writing. There is many other database options. I will go over them really quickly, but I will not go into them. But we're using LowDB just because it's super simple, and for time constraints, it allows us to all work in the back end and get things working, and it's really simple for beginners to learn out. So that's not what I wanted to do. Make sure you type install, and LowDB should be installing. And the very last package that we need is Morgan. Npm install Morgan. So Morgan is a package that, again, is not extremely necessary, but it's usually helpful when you're developing different things because it gives you a lot of options for connectivity and doing protocol management. So now we're going to start by creating our thing, our index.js, our entry point. So if you look at package.json, it has an entry point that says main index.js, right? So we're going to be creating that file, index.js. And inside this index.js, we'll be handling all the backend. So first, because I am using Linux, I need to write a shebang. The shebang is something that tells like the operating system where to find environment variables, where to find the node environment, and where to find like different applications that will help do things. So the first thing that we also need is we do not need the comment. That seems unnecessary. But we're going to create two variables. One, var app. This is the application. And the application, we're just going to we're going to target this somewhere else. Because index.js is our entry point, but we're going to handle everything in another file just to keep it much more clean. So we're going to require a non-existent file for now. We will make sure to add it in a second. App.js. It's non-existent, but we will add it in a second. And then our actual server protocol. So in Node.js, they have an incredible HTTP module. This HTTP module allows you to handle HTTP requests and be able to do a lot of different things with doing web serving and stuff. So we're going to require HTTP. And now we want to host this on some port. As you saw, the React application that is probably still open, actually. So I might need to be closing a lot of the tmuxes until I shut down the React as well. But we need to give it a port. So we are going to run this port. Yeah, we are going to run this port on 3000 because that's where I set the server to run on or to like listen to. So there's two parts of the port. One, if you're hosting this on like Google or on some server external server, usually they have a process.env.port. This is a port that is designated by your provider. But for most cases, if you're running this in a local host development environment, you can just use port 3000 or port 2000 and above. Be careful when you're using ports that are below 600 or 800, I can't exactly remember, because most of them are system reserves. When you're hosting a web application for development for actual like production, you want to be hosting it on port 80. That is the regulated HTTP protocol port, and port 443, which is the regulated HTTPS protocol, and they are defaults. So if I just went to the IP 192.53.121.145, if port 80 is set up properly, then you'll immediately get there. For us, port 80 is currently filled by Nginx so that we can host the code server. But for you, you can host it directly to port 80. Make sure you have the permissions to do it. You may need administrator rights because that is a regulated port. But for development, it's perfectly fine to use port 300 or 8080. So we're going to set the port to the port. This just tells the application that we're going to be using, that it's going to tell that this file, actually we're just going to call it app, where it's going to tell that this file that we're using the port. And now we can just do create the actual server part. So var server is equal to http.create server application. So this will create a server on the application. You're done. You created an entire HTTP server. It's as simple as this to create a simple HTTP server that runs with application. But now we actually need to make sure that the server is listening to something because we're not using this variable. So we can listen to the server. We can now listen to the port that we opened up. Listen to the port that we opened up. So now the server is listening to any communication going over that port. So everything that is coming through port 3000, posts, get requests, put requests, and delete requests, any of these requests, the server will listen to everything, including WebSocket. It doesn't matter what it is, the server is listening to that port. And then the server is going to do, we're going to use now error module. So this is going to let us see if there's an error. If there's an error, which is going to help us just diagnose things and a little bit. It's not necessary exactly. So if you guys don't want to include it, that's fine with you. It just makes diagnosing errors a little bit. I don't know where that came from. Vertical labs, ones that I do not have. On listening. So when it starts listening, this is another hook. So that one is a hook for error. This is going to be a hook for listening. So once it starts listening, we're going to run a function called onListening. So as you saw, I used a ton of functions that you've never seen and are not native. Normalize port, on error, on listening. These are functions that are not a native thing. So we actually have to code them in ourselves. I am just going to be lazy and copy that in from my previous code so that I can just explain it to you guys in, for time. So normalize port, because it's an env that is coming in, it's going to be a string. And the first thing that we need to do is turn that string into a max 10 sized integer. And once the 10 sized integer is done, it's just two checks. Is it not a number? If it's not a number, we just want to return whatever string that came out. Or if it's, and make sure that it's greater than 0, because there is no such thing as port -1. Otherwise, we return false and something went wrong, terribly wrong. So you don't want that to ever return false. And unindent that to make it look nice. And then we need to make the onError function, which is quite simple, which is really quite simple. We just literally do this on error, if syscall error, listen. So if it's not listening, if something went wrong with listening, so this should call every single second. And if there's a problem with listening to the port, it's just going to throw the error. So that's fine. And the last function that we need to do is a bind function. This bind function is a bit more complicated, which is why I am going to just copy it in. So again, this error function includes this bind function, and it's going to bind the pipe to the port, and it's going to bind the port itself. This allows us to use two of the most common errors, which is e-access. This is if you're running it on port 80, port 40, port 21, doesn't matter. Any port that is smaller and reserved, you need elevated permissions. You need administrator rights to run on those ports. And there's also error address in use. So this is if the address and the port number is already being hosted. For example, the React application is currently running on it. It's currently already being hosted, so it can't use it. Both of these we will just exit and break out, and then we'll throw the error. I'm sorry if you guys can hear a lawnmower outside. There's nothing I can stop about that. We're just gonna have to bear it. So the last thing that we need to do is a quick onListening function, which is going to be really, really nice and easy, which is just when it's listening. Again, we called it up here. So on server listening, we're calling onListening. And onListening, the address is server.address. For us, it's literally just the IP, 192.53.121.145. We have a domain that lets you just access it immediately, which is hackon.wilsonfw.com, just so that you guys don't need to type all that. It looks scary. This makes it look nicer. They're really the same thing. If you go into the network, if you go into the inspect and the network tab, you are going to the exact same place, the 192.53.121.145. This is merely a mask to make things look pretty and make people feel safer, but it's actually completely unnecessary. And then you want to keep an eye out on questions and whether or not I'm talking too fast, whether or not something needs to be explained.
Yeah. So if you guys have any questions, just enter into chat. I can answer, or Fencher can just answer it while he's running through everything.
Yep. So that concludes our basically index.js. Now we can work on the quick app. I'm gonna make things. We have to go a little bit faster because I think we're about approaching 1 hour. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to go a little bit faster, which means it's gonna be a little bit more difficult for me to explain everything. But I hope you guys can follow along as much as you possibly can. For our app.js, we are going to take three. We are going to take three things. One is your express module. Express equals require express. So this is just defining the express module. Path is a default node module. It just allows you to handle system paths and allow you to handle like locations and gives you the access to path.join, which gives you access to managing paths and file management. Create error, again, this is unnecessary, but HTTP errors will always make your life easier. When you have a bug, you can like use HTTP errors to quickly know what's going on. The next thing we need to do is we're going to create a folder called routes. And this routes folder is going to let us create a routing, basically handle the get requests. What do you do when the get requests happen? So we're going to be back into app.js, just create the index.js routes. We're not going to do anything just yet. Heading back to app.js, we're going to quickly define our index router to require the routes/index. Okay, so now we have these four variables. What do you do with them? Well, first we want to use the express somehow. So we're going to create the app. Remember in our index.js, we used app, but we have no idea what this is. So we need to define it here and export it out. So app is equal to express. We're going to use express to handle everything, and app is going to be express, and we're just going to export it out. So when you include this app.js file, what you will receive is you will not receive that. You will receive, I'm just going to write it. You will receive module, oh my gosh, module.exports. This in JavaScript just means to send out of this file, give to other files to use. We're going to export app out. So now other files can use app from app.js. Now we're going to do our most simple things, which is uh, set up our application. So first, we're going to make sure we're using Express, using the express.json. This will allow us to handle JSON communications, and it'll be very important for our application we're using today. It's also unnecessary, but if you're handling with anything in JSON, this will make life a little bit easier. This is unnecessary for your part, but it's really necessary if you're using a URL hack on that, like for example, something like this, a domain to mask your IP address. This will allow things to be non-included and non-extended, which means masks will work just fine with different port numbers. The next thing is we're gonna define a static directory. This static directory, we're going to basically set this to wherever we want. For now, we're going to leave this as joining to public. But we will, in the future, when we connect it to the front end, we'll set this static file to the public build of the React portion. And then we're going to actually set the routing now. app.use/, and we're going to set this to index router. So this is telling Express, when I go to 192.153.121.145 / what do you do with it? Well, send it to index router and let it handle it. The other thing that we need to do here is app.use. You don't need the index router, by the way. You can do everything in here, but I recommend you use a router. That way you can manage subdomains much easier. Then you can do your app.use, your request, response, and next you're going to send this. This is going to be your error function. When this happens, you're going to send it to next, and we're going to create this. This is where the create error comes in. We can just use this module to create the error, and we're going to do 404 not found, because if it didn't go through this, then it must not exist at all. So we're just going to send this to a 404 and create a quick error handler after this. Next sends it to the next routing, which means we can do app.use and we're gonna create a new the next routing, which is gonna take error, the request, the response, and the next is unnecessary here, but so I'll just leave it out. You guys can put in next if you want to do more routing after that. And we're gonna do response.locals. This is gonna take the message that it has and put it into error.message, or like this is gonna define requests locals message into error.message, so we can use it in the front end later. And the last thing, this is unnecessary. And the last thing is we want to send out an error status to let you know that it's either a 404 error or something went wrong with the server. So in HTML, there's many like service numbers. These service numbers include 200, which means A-OK. You'll see them a lot in the logs when we get this started. 201, which means redirect. 500, internal server error. 404, you've seen that many times. Page not found. 300, forbidden. There's all of these service codes. They don't actually matter. I can send you 500 and you can still get the page. I can send you 404 and you can still get the page. It's just a standard that people have adopted to let the front end know what's going on. If the front end got 404, maybe they'll do something differently. So the error status is just a little bit of help to let the front end know what's going on, and it's always useful to put this in. So now we are basically done with this file, which leads us finally just to the to the index router. So to do the index router, it's really simple. I'm gonna move this up here so we can. So the index router is really simple. We're gonna make this like as crazy simple as possible by simplifying everything down as much as I can. For the index router, what's up?
So it's asking if unused var won't cause errors.
Yes, unused variables will not cause errors. Mostly, if it's unused, you might not. You just probably don't want to keep it. It's extra memory. But when you have one or two unused variables, it really doesn't matter. Because it doesn't change much, and it's also the most of my unused variables, like these things, are useful for building on this application in the future, letting you work with it and trying to make it expand it as much as you want to. It's mostly for letting you control it in the future proofing essentially. So now we are going to work on the index router. The index router is going to be, we're gonna once again include the express because we're using express to handle routing. Require what's up? Anyways, require express. Just gave me a weird look, and I'm concerned. Yeah, you gave me a weird look, and I'm concerned. The router is going to be express.router, just letting them know that this is a routing file. So what is a routing file? A routing file lets you handle different things. It lets you handle requests to different domains. So now we're going to do our simple router.get. So this handles a get request. If the HTML sends a get request, if the client wants to get something, we'll send it back. So this is going to say from where. From if the client requests from slash, then we are going to send it back what it needs. Again, we're going to do request, response, next. You can make this your own function way with function way or the other way. It doesn't matter. And then we're going to do, so there's three variables here: the request, the response, and next. Next just means if you want to continue this routing somewhere else. Request and response are basically the most important part of backend code. So your router is taking get functions from the backslash from the root path, and it's going to handle the request and response. So we're going to respond when they request something. We don't really need to handle the request, but we are going to respond with sending them a file. We're going to send file index.html. We're going to make sure that this is in quotes. And now you can finally see the first fruition of the node of the backend node. This is the first thing that you can actually see, which is rendering a single page or sending them a single page saying hello world. not going to make this any fancy. We have plenty of fancy things coming up. So we're going to say hello world, and then we can actually finally run it. You guys have to give me a short second here because we have a ton of open Tmux windows that we do not need and probably are taking our port hostage. So we're gonna close some of this. Make sure that there's nothing running on the port that you want to run on, or you're gonna get some errors. Kill session T10, that's gone. T3, that's gone. T4, that's gone. T5, that's gone. T8, that's gone. T9. So now we're just going to check if there's anything else running. Hopefully not. Or actually, I just did not do that, but that's fine. We have a nice shell running. Now we can actually host the thing. So we're going to type in node index.js here. Yes, index.js, which is our host point, and it's going to run. And we're going to realize that we are missing a module. But that's okay. Required stack root/hackathon/index.js. Oh, right, because we did not tell them the router is. We did tell them the router is there. Don't think the semicolons is the problem. Oh my gosh, what am I deleting? Okay. Module not found. Required stack root/hackathon/index.js. This is most likely because of some routing issue between this. Oh, right. So wait, this is from root directory/roots. That should be fine. That should be fine though. No. No, it should automatically call. I wish I could figure out what code this is. Required apps. And app.js is here. That's okay. You guys, I basically explained everything and what everything does. Do you guys have any questions about all this? Because I can quickly set this to a stage. I can show you guys a quick way to auto build all this because some really smart dude at some big company already made all this for us and labeled everything. So I can quickly get that set up. If you guys have any question, ask it now. I think we're good. If you guys have any other questions, I can explain each module. But for now, I'm gonna quickly get this set up. It's gonna be the exact same thing, but the index.js is gonna move a little. So we're gonna just delete this stuff for now, which is fine. We're gonna delete new node modules as well. I didn't delete any of your stuff, did I? I don't think so. So we're gonna type here. We're gonna type. So there's a module in Node. If you type in npm install express generator, this will generate everything that I showed you. I just wanted to explain what exactly it's generated and like how exactly the generation works. Make sure you type in -g for global. It allows you to use it wherever, and it also sets the environment variables. And once you have that downloaded, we already have it downloaded. You can type in express, and then you can type in --view. And this is your view engine. We won't be doing view engine because we already have the React portion. So we're just going to type in EJS so that it generates faster. EJS is the smallest. And then it's going to generate all the files. This is the index.js that I showed you. It's exactly what I showed you basically. And it just put it into bin/www. It's just a view thing. It really doesn't matter where this is. The app.js is exactly what I showed you. They added different error handlers, and the routes and views is different. So for us, we're gonna clear the views basically, because we're not gonna use. Actually, we can just use it, and then we can show you exactly what it works. So the router.get, once again, it renders the index page and it sends in a title express. But now if you type in npm start, it should run on port 3000 just fine. And it's, oh, right, I need to type in npm install. Make sure you type in npm install. That's probably the problem that we had before, because it didn't have path. You need to make sure it has path. I kind of forgot to do that. You make sure you type in npm install once you've finished your thing. And now you can type in npm start, and it will run the server. And you should be able to see now, Express, welcome to Express. So this is the backend that allows you to handle routing. For our application, we're gonna do what's my time check? Okay, we're gonna we're gonna do really really quick routing now. So we're gonna go into we're gonna go basically handle the post requests and stuff. So to handle the post requests, we're gonna take in. I'm just gonna copy the code and explain everything. You know, basically we're gonna use loaddb, a file sync to allow you to edit the file. Our adapter is basically where the database is, and then your defaults to write the defaults. This is the slash function. You're going to send the file index.html instead because the React is getting compiled. We're going to send that file. The API slash posts, we're creating the API, and this is going to handle the GET requests. When they get API that's close, we are going to return the JSON content. So this content type is application/JSON, and we'll return JSON value inside the database. Right here is a really quick search function that allows querying and stuff. This is just saying that if it matches something, this is a really simple. And then the values is just database.get posts, and then it's gonna send it to our array, and dot value is just grabbing the value, and the filter is search, and then you're just searching. This is the post request, which is incoming data, wanting to get it saved into the database. Basically, get post, we're pushing it onto the stack. The description is going to be whatever stuff that you have. We added a filter. You can add it too. The filter module that we're using is called bad words. Just npm install bad words, and then filter equals new filter, and then you could just filter the thing out. This is just for a regulation and safety, making sure that everything is clean for our purposes. And yeah, this allows us to handle, and that's essentially the back end. It's not really complicated. This allows you to handle all the routing and stuff. So if you wanted to create anything on other places, that's you can do that yourself. I'm gonna switch to Bowen to really quickly create the forms, as we are a bit short on time.
I think for now, I think probably the best thing is just to show you how exactly it connects to the backend, really quickly. So we have our client in app. So let's just go back to our client, app.js. Oh yeah, sure, I'm down for that.
I think.
But yeah, okay. Well. Basically, all we have to do is write a get tips function. I'm just gonna copy paste it for now. Wait, actually, you know what? Just because we're running really short on time, I think it's better if I just go ahead and show you already made in this root/practice that we did earlier, like last week. So yeah, basically we have this is how you fetch the data. We have a get tips function. Now where's get tips?
You control X it, so you have to control Z.
Oh, I deleted it?
Yeah, you accidentally deleted it.
Oh, whoops.
Oh wait, no, that's
No, I didn't.
oh, right here. It's right here.
Yeah, but I never. Oh, I don't know why I didn't see that. Anyways, so basically, get tips is an asynchronous function, and what asynchronous JavaScript means is basically instead of like waiting for one thing to happen at a time, asynchronous JavaScript allows one function to be running in the back while all of your other stuff is getting loaded. So when we're fetching from a URL, sometimes it could take some time for all that data to come back. So we would make an asynchronous function, so our page would still get rendered during the time, and then when that data comes, then use effect would run get tips, which would set tips to a new data, which would re-render all of our tips with this new tips data. So here we have get tips, and then what we do is we get the response where we fetch from the URL, like our backend. So that would just be localhost or whatever you have /API/post or whatever URL you kind of made it go to, and then we would response.json it to get it into JSON format, and then we set the tips, our tip state to this new state called data, which is all the data that we got. And we call this get tips function right when the server gets run, like right when it renders using use effect. So we call get tips, and then it set tips to data. And when we change the state of tips, it just re-renders the UI and creates these new tips with these new data in it. We also have a form here. It basically is the exact same as this get request, except instead of a get request, it's sending the data, and it uses states as well. But that's basically the gist of it. We're probably gonna have all of this code up on GitHub or something.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to, take a look at it, I think we explained all the concepts. So most of this you should be able to understand, hopefully. And this is basically the app itself.
Yeah, we can actually host it right now. We're gonna quickly remove that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna close this session. We're gonna go to practice and just host this instead. And we're gonna do npm start here. So once you do npm start here, you can now see we've adjusted. You guys can enter your own things. And you can use the search bar and play around. There's not much added backend that we've completed. This mostly is cleaned up from the front end. I know the back end was really, really rushed. If you guys have any question, you guys can feel free to email me or think just me. Yeah, email me and I will explain everything much more detailed. I'll also be like posting all the code and written write-ups and explanation for those who are more reading orientated people to, and yeah, I might create something else to help you guys break down the back end in the future.
But yeah, everyone, feel free to go on to hack.wilsonfwang.com.
Create your own tips.
Yeah, if you want to add your own tip,
Try out the filter.
play more, play sports,
Yeah,
and when you add it, it should just automatically be added into our tips.
now. Oh no. I mean, seems okay. 304 seems okay. Did we mess something?
Do we run the build?
It seems like they're all there. So I'm gonna go check the database real quick. I mean, the database nothing has pushed, which is concerning. Did you modify anything?
No.
All right, give us 1 second. I'm gonna do a quick run of build. npm run build. Client thing? I don't know if it's a client thing though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a quick run of build, but we are wrapping up now. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask it now. This code will be posted on GitHub probably, and you guys can read around. We didn't add any like comments and stuff, so it might be difficult to read, but we will be slowly updating it into the week, and hopefully it will be much more commented and you guys can understand everything. If this doesn't work, unfortunately, I have no idea what's going on. Sadly, the thing seems working. The filter at least is working. The question is whether or not the enter tip is working. So test. From the looks of it, it is not.
Wait, go to the.
But that's it. I think we're out of time. Do you want to see what they? Yeah. I think we're out of time. I'm not sure what the event organizers' plans are.
Is it even sending a post request? Good enough.
Yeah, let's take a look. Seems like the post request is. Oh no, it's getting sent. But why is it sending here, not create post? It should be sending to create post.
Oh, yeah, just change the React URL thing.
Yep, that's.
So I think we sent it to the wrong route, maybe.
Get tips.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. What? Where? Submit e.prevent. No, this is get tips. Where's the set?
This submit.
Where is the?
Why did our fetch
You deleted the fetch function.
Um,
I think we deleted the fetch function by accident. I'm not sure where the fetch function is, unfortunately. Yeah. Okay. So this submit is missing its entire fetch function. Do you remember? So this is just
const response.
no, it's not response. We need to actually send the post request.
No, response. Const response.
Const. Really?
Yeah, response equals await. Fetch.
It's not a fetch.
No, it is fetch. Okay. Whatever route it is, and then add the options as another parameter.
Okay. Slash API slash create post
And
object
options.
options. Cool.
No, you have to const respond. Const data equal. Actually, wait, no, we don't have to. Yeah, that should be fine.
Yeah, I think we're about to wrap up. I'm not sure what the event organizers are trying to say. Take your time if it's not too much. Okay, it's not too much time. We're in a really quickly. I quickly rewrote the fetch function for you guys. Now, in theory, it should all be working. Oh wait, I need build. Hold on. CD slash client client npm run build. I'm gonna quickly run this build, and then you guys can play with it. But yeah, we'll be ending off. Let you guys play with it a little bit, and yeah. Do you have any closing statements, closing remarks?
Thank you guys so much for listening to our presentation, and a really big shout out to all the hackathon organizers for taking their time to kind of organize this whole thing, giving us the opportunity to speak. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and yeah, that's basically it.
Hi everyone. Vacation. Hello.
Yes, absolutely. We had a great time as well, and live coding is always interesting. We can encounter various errors and just solve them at the same time, and it was
Yeah.
fantastic.
Oh yeah, it seems to be working now.
It's working out. So yeah,
You guys can enjoy it. It's on hackonwilsonfw.com.
please feel free to play around for application.
Yeah.
Yes, awesome. And I can see like all of the people who joined us in the live, they also had a great time as well. And if in case we have any questions, like if you want to ask anything, feel free to drop all of your questions in the chat, and maybe we can take that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That happens.
Yeah, no worries at all. And yes, you were also speaking about sharing the repo link. So if in case you need to share that, feel free to maybe
Yep,
just share in the
of
live
course.
chat or maybe in the private chat as well.
It's a public repository. I could be mistaken, and if it is not, I will make it sure it's public. So this is the repo link.
Why don't we just give them this thing?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna put it here. See if you guys can work with that. I'm gonna make sure it's public. It's not updated. We'll be updating it over the course of this week. So check back if
We can just do it like right after this.
yeah, we'll do it right after. So yeah, thank you guys all for listening to our presentation. I've got nothing more. If you guys have any questions whatsoever, feel free to email me. My email is on my GitHub. I will also, I guess I can share my thing. Well, you can share the participation certificate link now.
Yeah, I'll do that from my end.
Okay.
Awesome. So I can't see any more questions coming from the live chat. If in case you have, feel free to ask. I've already shared the GitHub repo link in the chat, so you can just check that out as well. And as you know, you can maybe check out after some time so that it can be updated as well. And that would be like great. And yes, I can't see any more questions. But yes, thanks a lot for joining us, for making out time from your schedule and just helping us understand basic terminologies and many other steps as well. Live coding is always like a fantastic thing to just look out for, and it becomes really interesting. Just follow along, and that's so great. And thanks a lot for putting everything in a great way as well. And hope you had a great time over here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah.
Awesome. And for all of those people who have joined us in the live chat, make sure you just check that repo out. And I'm also sharing the participation certificate link in the chat. Make sure you just fill that out once. And for all of those who haven't yet, registered for the hackathon, head over to hackon.hackerathon.com and make sure you register yourself over there. Make sure you are joining the Discord as well. And yes, once again, take care, everyone. Bye bye. Thanks a lot for joining us.
See ya.
Bye.